Well, welcome to our first installment of the Revolutionary Stemist of 2026. I am thrilled to be joined today with two of the three co-founders of Integral Molecular, Sharon Willis and Joe Rucker. I'm going to leave it to the two of you to introduce yourselves to get us started.
Great. Thanks, Joanna. My name is Sharon Willis. I am one of the co-founders of Integral Molecular. I'm a proud graduate of Gettysburg College. I then went to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and got my PhD in chemistry in the biological track. And then came to the University of Pennsylvania and did a postdoc in the Cohen-Eisenberg lab at the dental school studying herpes simplex virus. So I went from being a chemist to a protein biochemist and then to a virologist where I met my co-founders. And we'll get more into that, I think, in a few questions.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Joe Rucker. I'm the Vice President of Research and Development at Integral Molecular. I actually did my undergraduate work at Haverford College, which is a couple miles west of here. I then did a PhD in chemistry at University of California, Berkeley, and then came back to Philadelphia to do a postdoc in the University of Pennsylvania doing HIV research. And then after that, taught for a few years at Villanova University before joining Integral Molecular full-time.
Amazing. I love hearing about your roots here in the Philadelphia and surrounding Philadelphia area. And that's part of what the goal for this podcast this season is to really showcase the Philadelphia biotech ecosystem and the amazing founders and scientists and leaders that are here and the culture that you're building in the ecosystem. So I wanted to get off started with like kind of the origins of Integral Molecular from your roots in general. How did your journeys begin? What pulled you from chemistry into virology and then into entrepreneurship, and how did that all kind of start?
It's a fun story. So like many chemistry, biology majors in college, I thought I wanted to go to medical school. And then I wound up going to and getting my PhD, but was still really drawn to that more medically relevant research, which is why I took the opportunity to study viruses and viral entry at the University of Pennsylvania, where I did my postdoc. So at Penn, at my lab at Penn, we were figuring out how do these viruses infect cells? What is it on the cell surface that allows viral entry? And at the same time, Joe and our other co-founder, Ben Durant's, were doing the same thing with HIV. So my lab, we were working on herpes simplex virus. They were working on HIV. We went to a lot of the same meetings on campus, stayed very closely in touch. And then when Ben finished his PhD at Penn, he went to Wharton to get his MBA. And always was very entrepreneurial and always wanted to start his own company. So when he finished, he wanted to start a company around some of the technologies that he and Joe developed in the DOMES lab, that I was sort of a part of as well in terms of some instrumentation that we worked on. And so when he was finishing up at Wharton, they had a business plan competition. And he asked me if I would help him with the business plan competition. And I said yes. I was starting to look for jobs and figuring out what I was going to do next. And so we entered 2 companies and we got to the final 8. And then we presented, and one of the companies came in first place, and one of the companies came in 4th place. And therefore, we had business validation that we had good ideas. And so then the next step was to get funding. So we applied for some SBIR grants. It's a small business funding mechanism through the NIH. So we wrote 2 SBIR grants. They both got funded. We then had scientific validation that we had good ideas to move forward with. And because the Science Center was just launching their first incubator space, it was enough money in those grants to launch a company as a Science Center incubator company in that space. And because they provided the space, the equipment, we didn't have to make capital investments in equipment to start the company. And so, that business validation from the Wharton Business Plan Competition, the scientific validation from the NIH, that in combination with what the Science Center was offering at the time allowed us to really kick off and get Integral Molecular started.
That's an awesome story, and love that you were able to really tap into the resources in the Philadelphia ecosystem. Like the fact that you didn't have to make those capital investments up front is amazing. And you were able to kind of run with the science from the beginning, it sounds like from the get-go, which is awesome. One of the things that really helps companies really get off the ground from the beginning is just not having to spend a lot of time building infrastructure and
Right.
just being able to just go. So
Right.
I love
Yeah.
that.
Not having to negotiate with vendors,
Yep.
not having to think about what copy machine you're going to buy, like all these little things that you just don't think of when you're starting a company was all taken care of.
Well, and actually, one other kind of interesting thing was the incubator that we're in opened the year that Integral started. And actually, Ben was involved in helping design the incubator. He was working with the Science Center at the time. So, there weren't incubators. And, now there are a number of places where companies can land, coming out of universities in Philadelphia. But at the time, that was it. And we can actually see our old building from the window right here.
Right.
And there was no other place. So we were one of the first companies in the incubator.
So cool. And now Attitune was actually just showing me that 3 or 4 spaces that you've actually shifted
Right.
throughout the city.
Mhm.
And now you are in this amazing space. It's a 50,000 square foot space and you have over 100 employees.
Correct.
So tell us a little bit about the growth that happened here. And for listeners who aren't familiar, like what is Integral Molecular all about?
Right. It's been really fun to grow a company. So as Joe said, when he finished his postdoc, he was a professor at Villanova for a few years. So it was Ben and I starting in the lab. And it was Ben's job to get us more money. And it was my job to really turn an academic research project into something that we could manufacture and sell. And we still have a company meeting every Friday morning. And before Joe joined, he lives in Center City. So he would come out to University City. He would come to our company meeting, really help us talk through and think through the science and what we were doing, and then hop on the train and go out to Villanova and do his day job. And so, it was figuring something out, hiring people to do that, and moving on to the next step. Figure that out, hire more people, move on to the next step. And the whole time, we're writing more grants to get more funding and really expanding our scientific footprint and doing that investigation into what does the industry need. We know we have these great ideas. We know we have the potential for these great products and platforms and services. And how can we adapt those to what the industry needs? And it was really the dawn of therapeutic antibodies. We became experts, and we were experts coming out of Penn in membrane proteins. So they're complicated proteins that live on the surface of cells and viruses and are really gatekeepers, not only for infection, but for allowing drugs to interact with cells and different diseases. That's really our core is in really understanding these membrane proteins that are so critical in drug delivery and disease treatment, but they're challenging to work with. So all of the services that we provide really make studying these proteins and getting the data needed to get a drug into the clinic easier and more accessible.
We're focused now on the dawn of antibody therapeutics. And that's really the major focus of our company now. When we first started, that's not necessarily what we were thinking about. We were thinking somewhat about antibodies, but we were thinking a lot about small molecules. And then as we realized how people were using some of our technologies for either antibody discovery or for antibody characterization, we realized that that's where we needed to focus, and that's where the need was. I think a lot of companies go through this. They have this great idea of what the market needs, and then the market tells you, no, we don't need that, but we need this. If you're listening, you make the pivot and you begin to put the effort into developing what other companies and academics need.
It's obviously because you did such an amazing job listening, it's obvious that you've been successful in growing the company over the last 20 years. And I think I saw you've had over 600 partners or 600 companies that you've worked with, and just incredible results over the last 20 years. And I see now that you also are using your own technology you have a preclinical pipeline of your own as well.
Yes.
Which is fabulous, like so cool that it's grown to that point. So tell us a little bit about how you got here. You told us about how systematically you took stages of, we needed to do this thing, we hired people to do this thing in terms of your scaling. What do you think made people want to come and be a part of this? Like, what are the cultural values that really drew people to be a part of this company and that have even caused them to stay?
Right. Yeah, we take our culture very seriously here. And I think we developed a company to be a company where we wanted to come and work, right? Where you're excited and happy to come to work every day. And really, what excites me about coming to work every day, it is the great science, but more it's the great people that work here. We hire really smart, motivated people who want to make a difference in healthcare and be part of a process that really helps people's lives be better. And I think we have a lot of employees who come to us because they realize that we're really dedicated to advancing human health and welfare and well-being. And they choose to work here because that is part of our mission. You know, we're a very collaborative company. We're a very innovative company. We're really dedicated to the science and doing science well and building that trust with our companies, with the companies that we work with and the community, that we deliver high quality products and services that can be trusted. And then the other really foundational part of our culture is being engaged with the community, not only the community at Integral Molecular, but the community in Philadelphia. So we are very involved with the co-op program at Drexel University. We love co-ops. A lot of our employees have been through that co-op program. We also are engaged with other universities, Jefferson, University of Delaware, to bring in students to get that work experience as they move on in their careers. You know, we really firmly believe it is one of our jobs to train the next generation of scientists, whether they're coming from university, whether they're coming from a technical school, from community college, or from the community at large through one of the many workforce development programs across the city. It's part of our job to train that next generation of scientists.
As we're large now, we have a lot of science going on. We have a lot of scientists with I don't know how many years of experience in different areas in immunology and virology and cell biology, but also a lot of people we've had to build as a business as well. So we have people in marketing and sales. And as particularly younger employees come in as they're thinking, where do I go? Am I going to go along the science route where I'm starting, or are there opportunities on the business side? And we also, just by working here, they can get a very good idea of the breadth of some career possibilities. And we've had people who have been great scientists and are like, you know what, I'm done in the lab. I want to do something on the sales side or the marketing side, and they figure out ways to do that either here or we help them get in touch with other companies where they can do that type of work.
Yeah, I think something else to note is that even for our own employees, it's our responsibility to train them. And, it's their responsibility to work here and, deliver and, work hard and everything. But if they're going to graduate school, if they're going to medical school, if they're applying for a job in another company, I want them to be the best candidate, right? So that they can move on to really achieve their goals, whatever their goals are for their careers.
Which speaks volumes of both of you in terms of your leadership, because I would say one of the greatest, I think, values of leaders that people appreciate is the ability to help people to move to achieve their own goals. It's not meant to hold on to them.
Right.
You want to train them to be the best that they can be, but you really also are rooting for them and want to help them achieve what they truly desire to achieve, which speaks so highly of the two of you as leaders. So one of the things I wanted to make sure that we talked about is what Integral is doing now in terms of your science. I mentioned that you have a pipeline ongoing using some of the platforms that you've created and developed, but tell us a little bit more about what's exciting for you in terms of the science and what you really want people to know about what's going on here.
Well, I mean, we as a company, as I said, we both support other biotech companies and pharma companies developing their products, particularly to bring them first time into the clinic. So what we would refer to as sort of preclinical and discovery stage. And as you mentioned, we have our own pipeline of antibodies. There's a lot of exciting things to go on here, but just to give a couple of shout outs, as it were, or vignettes, is, I think one of the areas that's been growing a lot and is of great interest is, how do we make therapeutics that are going to people safer? And one of the products we have is something we refer to as the membrane proteome array, which always referred to as MPA. And what this does is this is a platform where companies send us their antibodies, things that they think are going to be great drugs. And they're asking the question, okay, we know that this antibody hits target X, but does it hit something else? Is it interacting with something else, another protein that we're not expecting it to, which can lead to, side effects if it goes into patients or cause other problems once things hit the clinical trials. And so what this does is it enables a company to say, okay, we have an antibody that is targeting exactly what we want to target, or maybe it's targeting something else. And if it's targeting something else, we then have to decide, is this a problem? Should we pick another molecule, or should we, rethink whether we want to put this into humans? And it's known that there are examples where antibody drugs and small molecule drugs have hit the clinic with a particular target in mind, but then it hits another unexpected target, which causes side effects or death. So this is something that's been, it's increasingly important. And I think with some of the interest at the FDA to sort of modernize some of the ways of thinking about drug safety, this really fits into, what the FDA and actually other organizations are thinking about. So that's really one area. Engineering of antibodies and of proteins is always something that is done at a lot of different companies, and figuring out ways to do this more efficiently is something that we've been working on heavily with a new product line that we're coming out called Parito Plus, which basically takes an antibody and all the interacting residues of the antibody and basically says, okay, what changes can I make in the antibody to make the antibody better? And you can define better in lots of ways. It binds stronger. It's more stable. There's a lot of ways to make these definitions. And this is something that we've just launched, and it actually has implications for making better drugs. It has implications for intellectual property. And then just to, of course, talk about what we're required to talk about now in biotech, is it also has implications for AI and machine learning, because it's a platform that generates a lot of data that can be used to train algorithms to help you sort of make those decisions about, how do I make this antibody better? How do I make this antibody safer? And then, of course, you mentioned our developing our own therapeutic. That's my baby. That's my baby. And we have a lot of projects that are ongoing. And really, the most exciting one is one of the earliest projects we did was a partnership with another Philadelphia area biotech company, Context Therapeutics, where we worked with them to develop a molecule for treating various types of solid tumors: ovarian cancer, endometrial, testicular cancer. And at the beginning of this year, it entered clinical trials, and it's dosed at least 12 patients, and hopefully sometime next year we'll get a readout and see how it's working. But that's a very long process. We started working with Context in 2021, and then this was a project that predates the pandemic by a few years. So drug development is a long process, and it favors the patient. So, but it's really great to see it being tested, and we'll see sometime next year about the direction it's going. So
That's fabulous. Not only a collaboration of Philadelphia companies, but also you're getting it into patients, which is like the most rewarding part, right? Once it finally gets to that patient. So congratulations. That's so exciting.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, we're really excited as well.
And actually, coming back to the Philadelphia ecosystem, since we're talking about collaborations between the companies, you were talking about how you've watched the ecosystem evolve over the last 2 decades, or more than 2 decades. What was it like early on, and how has it really evolved? And can you tell us a little bit more about that and what's exciting to you about how it's evolved?
I mean, I can start. I mean, the way you would describe Integral, and probably a lot of companies from, let's say, the 2000s that were embedded in Philadelphia, was very sort of DIY, do it yourself. Integral never took outside funding. So we had SBIR funding, developed products, brought in revenue, and that enabled us to bootstrap ourselves up. And there are other companies as well that really took that sort of bootstrapping approach, or they might, get some investors, but it's not like these huge type of, VC funding that you see in the news nowadays. I think over the last decade, due to the rise of cell therapy, of course, coming out of University of Pennsylvania, and of course, gene therapy sort of best exemplified by Spark Therapeutics. We're slowly morphing into a sort of a more traditional biotech ecosystem with venture, but still a lot of smaller companies, spin outs from University of Pennsylvania and other universities, Drexel, Jefferson, Temple, and starting small as a DIY, but at some point, becoming a more traditional biotech in terms of funding.
Yeah, just the building that has gone on in the last 20 years is amazing. You know, the building where we are now, One U City Square, used to be University City High School. You know, none of this was around here. So it's been really fun to see the construction, to see things go down and buildings go up and then people moving in. We used to be fed exclusively by trucks in this neighborhood, and now we have great restaurants. The investment that the Science Center, Wexford, others have made in this area is phenomenal. And it's a very dynamic place to work now. And of course, there's Pennovation and there's the Navy Yard, the Curtis Center, the Sierra Center. So there's so much going on here. You can network around here every night of the week. And when we started, there was no networking. There was no networking. And so, that's been a really exciting development in the city, just that connectivity that's grown among companies in the University City area and across the whole city. And then, of course, with the Lilly Accelerator coming into town, that's really exciting also. It's really been exciting to be a part of the growth. And even just seeing how Presbyterian Hospital, we're right across the street from Presbyterian Hospital and how that's grown. There's always something going on around here, which is really fun.
Just add one other thing. I mean, when we began, I think we were probably invisible to the city of Philadelphia. And now I think the city of Philadelphia and the Department of Commerce has taken a real interest in biotech and the life sciences in Philadelphia. And it said we're a little unusual because we've got life science clusters here in University City. There's the Navy Yards, but there's things up in Temple, up in Kensington, at the Curtis Center, and I think the city is really trying to spearheading getting companies to come in, and also helping as one way of bringing the companies together and enabling us to know that we're not alone.
Right. And that is so true. Like when you're saying about we felt like we used to be invisible, but now we're definitely making a footprint. When I was asking around for who to first interview for this particular podcast, everybody said Sharon. They were like, you have to talk to Sharon. Right. And I was like, okay, for sure. I will reach out to Sharon. So thank you for agreeing to do this.
You're very
because
welcome. Thank
you are a celebrity in the city of Philadelphia in the life sciences ecosystem. So looking ahead, though, is there anything that you think the city needs in terms of infrastructure or talent development, policy changes, so that we can continue this momentum and keep growing?
That's a good question. And one thing, I know you're familiar with the Life Science Collaborative, and that's something that we're really working on with the collaborative is what's needed. Definitely talent development. I'm on one of the arms of the collaborative to really excite the younger students in science. So how do we get middle schoolers excited in science and not to lose interest as they're going into high school? How do we engage with high school students to choose those STEM majors when they go to college? And then we have so many great universities in the city. How do we get that talent to stay here? And I think by having all of this incubator space and all these companies spinning out, how do we let these university students know that there's this really cool stuff going on, here and across the city, so that when they're looking for jobs and they've enjoyed living in Philadelphia, for their college years, that they choose to stay. Yeah. So that's definitely one thing. We certainly, I think for now, have solved the space issue. So really going into the pandemic, there was no space. We needed more space. And we literally, right before the pandemic, rented the last available lab space in University City. We are born and raised here in University City, and we really kind of never want to leave. So, we could have gotten more space out in the suburbs, but, we really are dedicated to staying here in the city. So there's lots of space now. There's lots of opportunities, so much great science coming out. And then what we hear the most is really the funding, right? We need the dollars and the funding and the VC to really see Philadelphia. And that's where I think the Chamber is working hard, certainly LSPA and all the advocacy that they do, but it's really getting more VCs to really see the amazing science that's coming in Philadelphia and investing in Philadelphia, not investing in Philadelphia science to go to San Francisco, not investing in Philadelphia science to go to Boston, right? Let's invest in Philadelphia science to stay in Philadelphia.
I couldn't agree more. I'm so glad that you're talking about this. And I love that we have that community to build the talent pipeline, to keep talent here, and then to attract additional funding to the area. And the Lilly Accelerator is like such a huge win for the city
Yes.
that it's just, we're so excited for, I think everybody's so excited
Everybody's
about
excited.
that. So
Yeah.
it's amazing to see. So just to kind of round out today's conversation, I'd love to hear a little bit about what you are excited about in terms of the future for Integral in the next 3 to 5 years.
It's really interesting. It's a really interesting time for Integral Molecular. We have a number of mature product lines that they're killing it, right?
Mhm.
And so it's so exciting to see these ideas that we had a number of years ago really helping to drive therapeutics into the clinic, and people realizing, the FDA realizing how critical these platforms are for really accelerating drugs into the clinic. So that's super exciting. And then the other thing that's always exciting that's going on that I look forward to is you always have to be thinking about what's next, right?
Yeah.
What's the next thing that the industry needs? And so we have a number of other product lines, actually a spin-out company, Cell Surface Bio, for catalog antibodies, percolating and growing. And I'm not even going to say in the background, in the foreground. And it's just so exciting to be bringing on new people, understanding their expertise, and how can we really get these product lines and services to the point where some of our more mature products and services are more quickly, right? Knowing what we know, knowing what we learned over the last 20 plus years, how do we use that to keep launching new products, new companies, just, really using all this amazing talent that we have here and all these really great ideas, and keep that entrepreneurial spirit alive, and to really continue to help drive improvements in human health in the products and services that we offer.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I wanted to do a quick, just like Philly fun fact kind of thing, if that's okay,
Yep.
just to kind of spitball. So what is your favorite food in Philadelphia?
I have lots of favorite foods, but my current favorite food in terms of like a restaurant, Choreo opened earlier this year, right at the corner of 37th and Market. I can't go there enough. Everything there is delicious, and I love their wine list.
I've been in Philadelphia for a long time. The Philadelphia restaurant scene is amazing. So I'll just give a few shout outs. One is Tequila's in Center City, Spice Finch, another really great Center City restaurant. And then I should give out a shout out to our local, two locals. I think one of the things that we didn't realize that the biotech community in University City was missing was a place to grab a beer. That's been really great.
And you can find Integral employees there many nights of the week. Including Joe. Beer drives innovation.
It's the local hangout / hidden gem of University City.
Yes.
Any other hidden gems of University City or the city in general that you want to give a shout out to?
Well,
doesn't have to be a food.
Of course, Philadelphia is a city of great museums. If you're talking about just this area, there's the Institute for Contemporary Art, which is a couple of blocks south of here, which is a great little museum with a lot of interesting contemporary and modern exhibits. And the universities themselves have some small galleries that are all really nice. So there's some great art in University City.
Yeah, I think the Mutter Museum is one of the local favorites as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And then what's one word that you would use to describe Integral's culture?
I think collaborative and engaging.
Engaging, yeah.
Yeah.
And
So-
engaged.
And engaged. So there's 3 words.
I also heard another E in there of entrepreneurial.
Entrepreneurial.
Because it
yes.
definitely sounds like you really
Yes.
encourage entrepreneurial thinking, because you have some spin outs, it sounds like, which is
Yep.
awesome. So,
Yep.
well, thank you so much for joining me today. This was so much fun.
Thank you.
And
It was
it was
great.
such a joy to learn and share more about Integral and the city of Philadelphia. So thank you so
wonderful.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.